And greetings. Happy Monday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast with Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre. I'm Steve Deace. We're brought to you by our friends over at Jase Medical. September is National Preparedness Month. It's a great reminder to always be smart whenever it comes to our way of life, and it couldn't be a better time to prepare for the next time. That could never happen here. It happens here. It's just common sense. Get the Jase case, which provides real-world solutions like the Jase case, 10 emergency medications and prescription antibiotics shipped to your door so you're ready ahead of time. The Jase Daily, up to a 12-month supply of your chronic medications that are unique, customized to you. Through National Preparedness Month, Jase is running a huge sale to make emergency readiness more affordable. You can enter promo code DACE at checkout for a discount on your order. Promo code DACE at checkout for a discount on your order. That's promo code DEACE at JASE.com. Also, don't forget, great time for you to join the mission to make it possible for us to keep having Blaze TV by subscribing here as well. We're offering a discount right now. Get $20 off with the promo code DACE when you go to blazetv.com/DACE. You never know when the moment you could walk in and turn us on and we're not on anymore because of big tech. This is one way to make sure you get our content directly from us, but then you get all the exclusive content that we do each and every day here at Blaze TV as well. Comes down to $8 a month, 26 cents a day. I have to believe we're worth 26 cents a day. If not, I'm going to reconsider my life choices. blazetv.com/DACE. Use the promo code DACE to get $20 off at blazetv.com/DACE, promo code DACE. All right, coming up on today's show, we now have in our home state an open governor's race and an open senator's race. So it is quite possible per capita, more money is going to be spent in our state in the 2026 midterms here in Iowa than anywhere in the country. Now, again, the key phrase is there per capita. All right. I mean, more money is going to get spent in more expensive TV states like California, Florida, New York, Texas. Right. But when you look at our population sector, the narrow margins in the Senate, in the House, because one of the reasons we have a Senate seat now leads us to have an open House seat too, okay, in a swing district, as a matter of fact. And then the governor's race as well. This is going to be quite the test for our state, which has become one of the reddest in the union and has kind of helped set the example for America over the last few years. Are we going to continue going down that road? Or are we going to go back to where we were before? And so what's the environment right now in our state with these two fights ahead of us? And what does that maybe tell us about the environment nationwide? We're going to get into that with our good friend Bob Vander Plaats coming up here at the bottom of this hour. Next hour, it'll be your turn to ask me anything. I'll get through as many questions as I can in the half an hour. And then what remains, we'll get to in the overtime today for some bonus Ask Me Anything for subscribers at blazetv.com/DACE. And then the return of an old friend, Ed Dowd. We had him on quite a few times. He's a statistician and did some great work helping us break down the data over COVID. And I'm sure he's got a thing or two maybe he wants to say about the hearing that took place with RFK Jr. last week. But we're going to bring him on now to discuss the economy and where things stand. And just one little anecdotal microcosm in my own neighborhood, right? The house across the street from me sold a year ago for $400,000. The house next door on the same street with roughly the same dimensions, built the same year, just went up for sale on Friday, and they're selling it for $50,000 less. Same neighborhood. I mean, there's going to be a few flourishes here or there, different, okay? But I found that to be quite fascinating. You don't typically see on the same street, next door to each other, $50,000 price variations in the span of a year in a housing market. Know what I'm saying? So I've got some questions about what's really going on out there, because that's going to have a lot to do with whether we can hold the line when it comes to the balance of power in next year's midterm. So we'll talk about that with Ed Dowd, his return to the show, coming up, final segment of the show. All right, so over the weekend, we apparently had some power outages here we were not aware of. We discovered when we got in. And so therefore, we're going to do kind of a modified montage, because it took Aaron pretty much all morning to troubleshoot all of that to make sure you can actually have the live show this morning that you were hoping for. All right. So we're going to kind of do this old school. Aaron has the list of topics that he was going to address. He's going to set those up for us, and then the three of us will just kind of, react, respond here, kind of in a roundtable fashion for the first segment of the program here. So Aaron, fire away.
Yeah, so these are kind of the top 4 stories you need to know from over the weekend. I think story number 1, we'll get this out of the way right away. Et2, South Korea. So this was a big headline late last week. Homeland Security Investigations announced this massive workplace immigration and customs enforcement raid at the Hyundai plant in Georgia. Federal law enforcement agents arrested 475 individuals illegally in this country or in violations of their presence in the United States. Here's the twist, though. You think big old factory, southern United States, these are probably workers from Guatemala, illegals from Guatemala, Mexico at all. No, 300 some of them were from South Korea. Presidential Chief of Staff for South Korea, Kang Hoon-sik, said that South Korea and the U.S. had finalized negotiations on the workers' release. He said South Korea is going to send charter planes to bring the workers home as soon as next week.
This is good, right?
Well, it's good for a lot of reasons. I'm not sure the one you're referring to is the one I'm thinking of in my head, but like the whole this thing, the whole lie of no one else will pick the lettuce.
Yes.
These are good paying jobs.
Yes.
Why do Americans not have them?
I mean, for example,
by the way, the Hyundai plant, beneficiary, as you can imagine, of massive federal subsidies, state tax breaks,
of course,
things of that nature.
Of course. We're in this thing with India right now, okay, over the tariffs, okay? And for those of you that don't know, the 2 biggest polluters in the world, and it's not even close, are China and India. It's not even close. They're the 2 biggest polluters in the world. And yet, when you hear about global environmental policy, you almost never hear about which 2 nations.
Them.
And you almost always hear about which nation.
Us.
Which would tend to then think if you claim to be for the environment, but you spend most of your time ignoring the nations that are polluting it the most, that would tend to lend itself to the belief that there's maybe ulterior motives at stake here. And this isn't the real reason why you're concerned about the global environment.
You're full of beans, yeah.
Correct. And so what would be different about America and China, and to a lesser degree India, but there's clear differences. But what would be different? We have a fully flourishing, well, resembling, I guess, kind of.
Not so fast, my friend.
Capitalistic system. We're in this era where we're being attacked by our enemies for being the nation we used to be and that we aren't anymore. And I don't know quite how to respond to that, right? Because I don't want to lie to my audience. We're in this like nether region, where we're in this ethereal, where we're not China, but most of the people that are in charge of the institutions of the culture want us to be. I just, like we're called like, we're the lead Christian nation on earth. We're not. Culturally, almost all of our institutions are godless, Marxist, pagan, but I repeat myself, okay? We're not really a capitalistic system. We have, I guess, more capitalistic leanings, accoutrements, traditions than the other 2 countries. Is that fair?
We just suck less.
Because again, we're getting attacked for a branding we no longer even, in many of our places in America that matter, even want to own or claim. So, but that would be the difference. We're the last outpost left where a critical mass of people have agency to push back on global tyranny. We're the last place left on earth. Both with a vote and then also the fact you own 400 million guns. And so that's what environmentalism is really about. It's really about that. So it shouldn't be a shock that 5 minutes after we said to India, you should be paying us, the world's largest democracy, you should be paying us as much as we're giving you. 5 minutes after that, okay, they went sol, pek and bol, and they went over to China. 5 minutes, literally 5 minutes after. Shouldn't be a shock. A caste system is very much like a communist system. They do what they can on a cultural level to keep Christianity from influencing the culture there as well. Right? Instead of just a Politburo, it's a Taj Mahal. They have way more in common with China than they do with us structurally. China believes in a permanent underclass. So does India, for example. Now, why am I going here in this conversation? Because I think that preamble is important for the point that I'm about to make now. Because it ties into this South Korea story. If indeed India wants to align itself with China and Russia, can you explain to me why we are giving a singular H-1B visa to anybody from India? Can you just, and I'll wait. Now, for those of you that don't know what those are supposedly, well, again, I don't want to lie to you. There's the branding and then there's the reality, okay? But the branding is these are high-tech jobs that there's not enough Americans qualified for. It's not that Americans won't do these jobs. It's that you're too dumb. Is that pretty much the branding?
Which is a problem all by itself.
Correct. And of course, the corporations that complain about such things were the same corporations that advanced the ideology in the Democratic Party that created the dumbed-down American school system we have in the first place. So there's the branding, and then there's the reality. But I would say to President Trump, if we're just going to tell India, as he did a few days ago, off you go then, enjoy China and Russia, we'll be fine without you, and we will be, then explain to me why we would import a single Indian on an H-1B until we were convinced every single qualified American who wasn't crack cocaine had one of those jobs first. Why would we do that? Why would we not do that? Can you think of a real reason why?
No.
And I think that what's more, who is taking more high-paying jobs away from Americans, South Korea or India? India is. I don't think it's probably not even close, frankly, if we looked at the numbers. So I think that I applaud South Korea coming and getting their people. Good job. But I think it's time to tell India to come and get their people.
Absolutely.
I just will come. And you know what? Here's the other thing. You want to talk about difficult choices? If we don't have Americans can do that job, would you rather have AI do it or import the Indian culture into America? What would you rather do?
AI.
I'd rather just have AI do it then. To me, between the Americans we haven't given those jobs to and AI, we probably can account for the vast majority of jobs going to H-1B visas. In fact, I'll throw that out there as a premise, and let's let that be challenged somewhere. I think we need to start looking at what is the cost of what we're importing into the culture. All right? Are the people for the economy, or is the economy for the people? Which one is it? Right? What do we import? And I mean, we're already in an economic deficit to India, probably in a cultural one. So why are we importing their culture here then? I'd rather either just make sure every last American that can do that job has one of those jobs, and let AI handle the ones they can't. And they can do those jobs in India then. Thank you. Appreciate it. We don't need you. Thoughts?
Well, I'm the one who brought up the lettuce example, and this shouldn't be a problem, good paying jobs, but I will play devil's advocate, and this is a theme I regularly bring back of men. What do they ultimately care about? Do they really want those jobs consistently? Do we have the caliber of American men who, through American education and soft-headed churches and et cetera, and then pile on top of that unions, which have come around to Trump, but in terms of a wage gap, is there? I think those are questions we need to. You are right about absolutely everything, but I think that might be the Achilles heel on this thing. Is all I'm saying.
That's a great point.
Part of I keep coming back to and I fear the most.
Correct. Part of the wage gap calculus, I say this to guys, young guys, when they come to me and they're like, well, I don't like the pay of this job. Well, what are the benefits? How much of your out-of-pocket health insurance are you having to pay for? How many weeks off do you get? How much personal time paid home that you have with the family? Like, look at an overall salary package, right?
Yeah.
And it still may not be what you want. That's fine. But look at more than just what's going to actually be in my paycheck. Do a full cost-benefit analysis. That's kind of what you're advocating. I'm all for that. Then I think we have to include the cultural calculus into it too then.
Of course.
That's got to be part of the math as well. Right? Just like any job, okay? Do I want to take a little bit less to work for a boss who's not a douche or get the maximum amount of work, amount of money I can to put up with a boss who's a douche? Most people are probably going to say, over the long haul, not working for the douche is preferable because I'm not a robot, I'm a human being. And how I relate to the people around me does impact my own performance and the way that I see my value and how much I truly want to put into any kind of endeavor like such, right? Mm-hmm. So I think the same thing should go here. Which is I just think the cultural calculus should be a part of all the math we're doing nowadays.
All right, story number 2. Debate continues to swirl over whether or not the United States actually has the moral authority, wherewithal, to blow to smithereens narco-terrorists. Over the weekend, Secretary of State Marco Rubio said, quote, I don't care what the UN has to say. Why haven't we had a Secretary of State willing to say that my entire life? Also, Vice President J.D. Vance got in on the action saying, quote, killing cartel members who poison our fellow citizens is the highest and best use of our military. Lefty Brian Krasenstein replied, quote, killing the citizens of another nation who are civilians without any due process is called a war crime. J.D. Vance responded to that lefty saying, quote, I don't give a bleep what you call it. That sentiment prompted Libertarian Senator Rand Paul to say on social media, quote, JD, I don't give a Vance, says killing people he accuses of a crime is the highest and best use of the military. Did he ever read To Kill a Mockingbird? Did he ever wonder what might happen if the accused immediately executed without trial or representation? What a despicable and thoughtless sentiment it is to glorify killing someone without due process.
Kill everybody, every drug cartel member you can, anywhere on the planet, no matter where they are. That's my position.
This is where, and I think when you talk about the 80-20 of libertarians, mm-hmm. I think we're...
The other 20%, you're just about. Like, what are we doing here?
Because this is just...
You mean like Rand Paul quoting To Kill a Mockingbird?
Just comfortable ivory tower nonsense.
Have you not watched season 3 of Star Trek? Did you not see on City on the Edge of Forever what happened when Joan Collins... Stop.
Yes.
Stop.
This is like when limousine liberals lecture you. Like, this is what... J.D. Vance, a man now you've actually met, shared one-on-one time with, and talked about your shared experience. Like, you want to come and lecture me about the impacts of crack and what it does to destroy families and cultures and families? Like, J.D. Vance is a miracle. He overcame all of that somehow. And we want to do these white papers on it. It's madness.
If we can, we've got to get our hands around, that's one of the things we're talking to Ed about next hour. We got to get our hands around this kitchen table economy. If we can, we're going to obliterate these guys next year because they're on the wrong side of like 70-30, 80-20 issues on literally everything else that matters to people. Crime, immigration, importing fentanyl drugs. They're on the, and they'll literally just take whatever position is opposite Trump's. It's really not any more complicated than that. Their entire brand is Trump is literally Hitler. Their people really believe this. That's what turns out their base. And so we've got to get these issues are intertwined. They're not exclusive. We can be on the right side of all these issues. If people don't feel like this time next year, what's happening at their kitchen table is better than it was the year before, we're going to, I don't know how many seats we can still gerrymander out, how much blood is left in the turnip, but it's better be a lot because you're going to lose 20 to 40 House seats because we're going to get killed with indies. I'm just telling you that, bottom line. We're going to get killed with indies. But if we can, I mean, this doesn't have to be .com or Morning in America, but if we can at least get our arms around the kitchen table economy again, that is now where voters will look at the wider swath of issues and do this. And again, a larger cost-benefit analysis. Hey, it took a little bit longer. I thought things would be better, but these people are knucking futs over here. We cannot vote for these people. This cannot be my congressman. This cannot be my senator. This cannot be my governor. All right? But if we don't have our arms around the kitchen table economic issues, they're going to. That's just human nature. So, but aside from the kitchen table economic issues, Trump's got them for illegal aliens, drug cartels, child molesters, gangbangers, because that's where their base is. And David Axelrod a week ago urging governors and Democrat governors and mayors to take the president's offer of help, get it out of the way, and then take credit for it. That's good politicking, but David and his former boss, Barack Obama, are frankly two of the reasons why their party's not capable of that level of realpolitik anymore. They're not capable of that level of triangulation anymore. It's now true belief in Marxism or bust, and that went out with Bill Clinton. And so that's who the Democratic Party is now. But just to reiterate, kill every drug cartel member you can, as fast as you can, anywhere in the world. This has been my TED Talk.
Story number 3, the Phillies Karen. As the Philadelphia Phillies were putting the final touches on a win over the Miami Marlins on Friday, Harrison Bader hit a home run, leading to some commotion out in left field after several Phillies fans attempted to grab the home run ball. One fan secured it before walking back to his spot several seats over to give it to a young boy, dropping it in his glove and giving him a big hug. Fan didn't have the ball for long. Almost immediately after the man had the baseball, another fan, who seconds earlier attempted to grab the same left field homer, followed him back to his seat, where she grabbed his arm and appeared to berate him. After a few seconds of arguing, the man folded like a cheap suit, reaching into the boy's glove for the baseball and giving it back to the Phillies Karen.
Death of America. There.
First of all, I guarantee you that chick lives in a cul-de-sac, owns a Subaru with a coexist bumper sticker, and is confident that Hillary would be president now if not for a Russian P-tape. I promise you that's true. I promise you it is. Now, I don't say this a lot. In fact, we get more emails from people getting on us for being too hard on the men than easy on them. Fair?
Yeah, that's what you say. Yeah. I mean,
but I'm not entirely sure what he could have done other than just say to his son, "Hey, we're leaving." There's nothing to do with a crazy woman. There's no win.
You don't give her that ball.
I agree. You don't give her the ball.
Any circumstances.
But that would require then saying to your son, "Hey, grab your coat. We're out of here."
No, just sit there.
I think you're asking for an incredible amount of temperance and patience, because women like this are not going to just walk away. This is Glenn Close. This is Glenn Close. I will not be ignored. They're emboldened.
Booing her. We can't let them win.
I hope that you're right. That just sitting there, the crowd would have turned on her. I hope that you're right about that.
They did turn on her. There's video of it.
Okay. That all being said,
did you see the look in the kid's eyes?
Yeah.
You can't. This is my point about all your sports bro energy. He put in the energy to get the baseball, and then real life came along, and nothing. And so that's what kids see all the time. Their kid, baseball, football, sports, bro. And then real life comes along, and you just get betrayed. That kid saw nothing but weakness. Oh, you didn't have to do it. And then the number of people that in the timeline are like, what could it and giving me scripture verses about turn the other cheek and things like that. If the choice was apparently either give the ball or fight her, no way. No way.
What's she going to do anyway?
Yeah.
Watch more MSNBC. But crazy women are difficult to navigate. They are no-win scenarios. You can't lay hands on them, nor should you. They're more emboldened than ever before. That's why I said to my son, man, just run. There's nothing to do with a crazy woman. Don't engage, don't talk, don't speak. I'd love it if he had the patience just to sit there and let her berate him and until the crowd fully took it over. I'm not sure that would stop her. You're dealing with religious level zeal with women like this. But the scene in and of itself is a portrait of a dying culture. I completely agree with Todd on that, 100%.
Finally, story number 4 is safer in Kiev. Haunting video was released over the weekend showing the last moments of a Ukrainian refugee's life before she was stabbed to death on a Charlotte light rail train last month. The surveillance footage released by the Charlotte Area Transit System shows 23-year-old Irina Zarutska boarding the Lynx line just after 9:45 p.m. on August 22nd. The footage shows Zarutska in her pizzeria uniform while scrolling on her phone. A man, as you can see in the red hoodie, is seen sitting behind her. Around 4 minutes later, the man pulls out a knife and begins stabbing Zarutska 3 times, including at least once in the neck. Zarutska, who had fled war-torn Ukraine, grabs her neck as blood spills onto the floor. Officers arrive to find 34-year-old DeCarlos DeJuan Brown Jr. on the outbound platform wearing the suspect's clothing that matched the suspect's description. Records obtained by the New York Post and other outlets showed Brown had a long history of arrests going back more than a decade, including charges of felony larceny, robbery with a dangerous weapon, and communicating threats. Police said Brown and Zarutska did not know each other and the attack was random.
I saw Christina Pushaw in Governor DeSantis' office, who's from that part of the world originally, say over the weekend that a lot of people are wondering why would she have just assumed that she was safe in public transit. And Christina pointed out, hey, in the part of the world that she is coming from, that's literally the safest way to travel. Everything's tightly surveilled. They don't tolerate this kind of stuff. So this is another death of a culture kind of thing. I mean, the reaction of the people around, just kind of watching the blood flow, I just...
the same kind of men who are content to have Karens like that run every part of their infrastructure. I'm just going to sit passively back. I'm not... yes, tell me I can't be armed. I won't be armed. Just run life for me. They're the same problem. And
then the one guy that decides, no, I'm not doing that. I'm going to take action. It's Daniel Penny, and we tried to ruin his life.
Very good point, Aaron. Thank you for interjecting that. A guy who's trained in self-defense and the use of violence for noble causes. And yes, we tried to ruin his life. Yeah. So
at least the games are back on.
We're really in revival or bust territory here. I mean, and that's something we've said in our show for years. And one of the things Nefarious points out in Nefarious Plot is because the founders created cultural institutions as bulwarks against ideologies and contagions like what Nefarious was trying to plant into the culture, it required corrupting the populace here at a molecular or granular level. It was going to take a multi-pronged, multi-generation approach. You weren't going to be able to just capture a couple of institutions on high and have that trickle down into the rest of the culture. It was actually going to have to work the other way around. You were going to have to actually pollute the water table of the culture so that then when the institutions change, there would be no resistance to that. And I think the last two, videos that we just discussed in Aaron's opening here, I think are indicative of the success of that effort. And, this goes back to with, Liam Thomas just sitting there. And the very first guy to cross over into the space of women's sports with the NCAA swimming championships a few years ago. And the dads are just sitting there doom scrolling on their phones. One of those dads, by the way, sports writer Pat Forty, his daughter was racing in that. He's got lots of thoughts on virtue signaling and moral authority to share with you, by the way, while he has said nothing and done nothing at all whatsoever with a giant platform at Sports Illustrated to defend his own daughter. So here we are. All right, back here on the Steve Deace Show, and we are powered by our good friends over at Preborn. Since the overturning of Roe, over 100 baby-killing clinics have shut down. That's great news, but here's the heartbreaking part. Some of it is also because the baby-killing pill has taken their place. Some of it is what we did to them, and then a lot of it is they just decided, why pay for a bunch of bricks and mortar when we can just turn your mailbox into a gas chamber? Why do that? So this makes it more important than ever to fight this on the ground, soul to soul, with partners like Preborn. Every single day they're out there rescuing lives, about 200 babies a day. Already this year, you've helped them save about 40,000 babies. With your generosity, it costs just $28 for one ultrasound. That doubles a baby's chance at being born, at life, and maybe doubles a mom's chance of not losing her soul, because I do think something unique happens to you in terms of the searing of your conscience when you kill your own children. And we're witnessing that. That's an entire political lobby today. That was one of the core constituencies of the last presidential cycle. All right, so if you want to make a tax-deductible donation to keep helping Preborn win this fight, go to preborn.com/Steve online, preborn.com/Steve, or on your mobile phone, dial pound 250, say the keyword baby, pound 250, keyword baby on your mobile phone, or preborn.com/Steve. Let's welcome in our good friend, Bob Vander Plaats, who's getting ready to head out on the Footsteps of Paul tour. So you'll be gone for a couple of weeks here on the program?
I've only missed 1 week. Might be a little bit jet lagged the following week. We get back actually the 21st on a Sunday, so I'll be back on the 22nd. But yeah, a little Greece, a little Turkey, a little Del Tacket, Footsteps of Paul, and a great delegation of the family leader going down there. So it should be very insightful. Just like when you go to Israel the first time, you say, I'll never read the scriptures the same again. Mm-hmm. I got to believe this is going to be kind of that.
Brings it home, does it?
It really does.
All right. Well, let's get into what's going on here in our home right now. Okay. And we are now going to have the top two positions statewide wide open in next year's midterms. I told the audience, it's the key is per capita, right? We don't have the population base or the media centers to match dollar for dollar what's going to be spent in Pennsylvania or in Florida or in California or Texas, right? Okay. But per capita, one quasi-major media market here, a little over 3 million people, and given the small amount of margins in both the Senate and the House, because now with Joni Ernst stepping down, the congresswoman from Eastern Iowa, Ashley Hinson, is stepping down to run for that seat. So that's going to open up, and that's the biggest swing district in the state, probably, okay, if not the one that we live in. Mm-hmm. So, and then we have an open governor's race as well because of the announcement that Kim Reynolds shocked everybody with 5 months ago. So per capita, we're going to probably spend more money in this state than will be spent anywhere in the country on those races. On top of that, I think we should discuss, therefore, what is the environment on the ground here heading into these fights? Because I would definitely say our state is redder than the median average of both the country and other red states. Fair?
Totally agree.
Okay. So
didn't used to be. It is.
But that's the environment that we've worked very hard, a lot of us have, to create and make that happen here. Okay, and you were a big part of that.
Steve, is it was changed in that way before Trump.
Yeah.
And then Trump only accelerated.
Yes. The thing that, and I've said this many times, the thing that Trump helped us to do is we had everything in place to turn the state from purple to red, which we had already done. But we still had a lot of rural areas of the state that just were turned off by corporatism in the Republican Party, that no matter how much we went to family values with them, they just believed Republicans didn't care about them.
Sure.
And Trump's economic messaging kind of was the last hurdle we needed to go from a state trending red to a state deep red, because that is what unlocked the rural Iowa voter for us. 30 plus Iowa counties that voted for Obama twice and have now voted thrice for Donald Trump, for example. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I think that we are a good test case for where the country is, because if we're struggling with energy here, given the gains made here, I'm concerned what that says where things are on a national level that is trending behind us in terms of how red the activism is on the ground. On the other hand, maybe things are great. So, We're 1 year away from being in the throes of the environment that will determine the election. It'll be too late to change things. That's the environment. We're going to have to figure out how to win in it. That'll be cemented by this time next year, post-Labor Day, heading into the midterms, right? So 12 months out from cementing that environment, what's the energy level here on the ground? How prepared is our side for these two fights?
Well, let me give you, the audience, a couple of things, and you've alluded to them, Steve. First of all, you have your top two positions open. You got the governor's race and you got the U.S. Senate race open now with Joni Ernst stepping aside. The reason that's a big deal is this will be a decade decision. Iowa politicians don't change over very quickly. You had Terry Branstad, longest-serving governor in the nation's history. You have Chuck Grassley, longest-serving U.S. Senator, I believe right now, in the nation's history. You had Attorney General Tom Miller, longest-serving Attorney General in the nation's history. So now you have a U.S. Senate race open and you have a governorship open. So for Iowans, this could be a seismic shift for a decade or more, if whichever way the election goes. That said, the energy on the ground is absolutely dismal. Matter of fact, Steve, I think you went to an event and you said there's people there who didn't even know Kim Reynolds announced that she wasn't running again.
Correct.
And these are activists. These aren't just your typical people that are
If you're coming to a party event in early August, and then you're committed, you're invested, okay? In a non-election year, you're the hardcore, and there were people there that were not aware of that.
And so with Joni Ernst announcing she's not going to run again, she's going to retire, and her and Ashley Hinson obviously had a deal made because Ashley Hinson came in with, I've got all these endorsements, I'm announcing a 99-county tour, publicly announcing my campaign. I do know from the highest of levels here in the party apparatus in Iowa, they're hoping that she can give some energy and momentum and wake people up. Because if we don't, there are things that are showing caution flags all over the place, both tangibly and, say, anecdotally. Anecdotally is there seems to be no energy. Tangibly, there's a special election that was just held a couple of weeks ago where Trump won that district by 11 points, and our candidate lost that district by 11 points. That's a 22-point swing. And earlier, in about 18 months ago, it was a deal where Trump won. Probably not 18 months ago, it was in this year. In eastern Iowa, where Trump won the district by 23 points, we won that special election by 3 points. So tangibly, we're saying the numbers aren't adding up. I mean, there's energy and enthusiasm on the left. There's not energy and enthusiasm on the right. So we need something to spark that energy and enthusiasm to say we want to be in the game in this crucial midterm. And Iowa will be the hottest state in the country, bar none, with our congressional races, our U.S. Senate race, and our governor's race.
So if we're asleep here, and you and I do get to travel, you and I both travel all over the country doing this. If we're asleep at the wheel here, then I'm going to assume we're pretty much asleep at the wheel absolutely everywhere.
That's my fear. And part of it is, does President Trump give us this false security that, and now he's not going to be on the ballot?
Yep.
Right? This false security, hey, we're just going to win because we're going to just get tired of winning. But when Trump's not on the ballot, I think there's a huge concern. And usually with an open governor's race, Steve, and I've ran for that office a couple of times, that office doesn't come open very often. So when it does come open, there should be energy around that particular office. And right now, we're just not seeing it. It's not that the candidates are typically bad candidates. We're just not seeing the energy of even to say, we want to make sure that the baton is passed and passed successfully from Kim Reynolds to the next governor.
So I think we have two structural issues. And one of them, I think we will not be able to do anything about. And the other, I'm not sure how much we can do about it, as long as we're going to have the interest rates we currently have, and the Americans are sitting on the amount of liquidity in their homes and their equity that they really can't afford to tap into because of how high those rates are.
Sure.
Okay. So the first one is we got to get our arms around the kitchen table economy. There's some macro things in terms of what the markets are doing and things of that nature that the White House likes to pump. But you see anecdotal signs like Amazon had one of the worst Amazon Prime days in the history of the company, recently. You can just see on the kitchen table issues that it hasn't, pardon the phrase, trickled down to the level that people are going out there and doing a bunch of discretionary spending right now. All right? And that's got to get addressed, okay? And I think if we do address it, I think we could wipe out Democrats next year. Yep. Because they're outside the mainstream, way outside of it on every other issue people care about. But if we cannot get our arms around the kitchen table economic issues, then I think next year becomes very difficult for us.
That's why President Trump has put so much pressure on Powell, saying, lower those interest rates. Because if you go to the gas pump, I think there's a lot of people saying, I'm okay at the gas pump today. I mean, it's a pretty stable thing where I go, it's not the skyrocket high to say under the Biden administration. There's a lot of other kitchen table goods where that's a problem. And then you put the deal about affordability to buy a home.
Yeah.
Say for your daughter, my son, what? And then there's.
See, I actually think the gas thing is a good analogy for where we are. They're not escalating to the point of where they were before. They're still way higher than people are used to paying.
Yep.
I mean, here in Iowa, $2.89, and you're paying $3.89, $4.89 in California and other places. So that's, I think, a good marker for where we are when I say kitchen table. The descent we were in, the managed decline we were in, has been stopped, right? Mm-hmm. But like Amy and I did our monthly grocery shopping at Walmart, and I talked about this in the show last week, just a week ago. And we have the fewer people to buy for than ever before. We have 2 different trips coming up during this grocery period that we're out of town for, so we don't have to buy food for. We also do like one of those HelloFresh things, because those are excellent for meal preparation when many nights it's just the 2 of us, right? So this was the least filled cart at Walmart we have ever had in the history of our entire family for a monthly shopping trip. It was $300 even.
You didn't see it at the cash register, did you?
No. In fact, we stopped on the way out the door, okay, and went through the receipt and everything in the cart, because we could not possibly believe that that's what it cost.
That's a bit of deja vu. Darla and I just did that. I said, whoa, come back. Before we walk out this door, I want to see how did that thing scam us at the scanner?
Yeah.
And no, it didn't scam
I'm making the best living I've ever made in my life right now, and I felt that $300. I cannot imagine people who are not making as much money as I am, how they are feeling that.
Yeah.
And so the good news is, hey, the price of eggs is not the ridiculousness it was before. The bad news is it's not anywhere down to where people are accustomed to it used to being. And that's the same thing with gas and virtually everything else. And somehow we got to figure out how to get our arms around that, Bob.
And that's why I think you're seeing the low energy as well. About, kind of like, I was hoping there'd be this huge difference. Not everybody's caught up into the stock market like some of your listeners. I mean, they are caught up in the stock market. Like, what's the stock market doing? But other people, their stock market is that Walmart, tab after groceries, or the grocery store tab. And so, Steve, I think you're hitting it in regard to the kitchen tables. And what can we do? I think there just has to be more trust in a President Trump at that level. But will that trickle down to, say, the governor's race and the U.S. Senate race?
The other issue, I think, is just a sunk cost, and there's not much we can do about it. And how do I put this delicately? We're in a situation where the president has successfully branded himself as the most right-wing based figure we could possibly have, right? Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of things he's done as president this time around that he didn't do the first time that is actually cementing that branding. He's actually living up to that branding to some degree, when the first time around he kind of really didn't, all right? And so that has greatly raised the expectations of our people. That's kind of not who Ashley Hinson is. It's certainly not who Joni Ernst was. And it's really not who most of the Republicans around the country we're being asked to vote for. And the president right now is really, it's almost as if he's not even ideologically, in many cases, filtering his endorsements, as opposed to who can win that I can get in office and hope they do what I want them to do, right? And I understand why. I even understand why they feel that way, because if we lose the House, he's a lame duck the next day. And he's just fending off impeachment for the last 2 years. And so is Bobby Kennedy. And so is Pete Hegseth. And so is Marco Rubio and every cabinet official. Mm-hmm. Everybody's getting impeached. That's all we're doing for 2 years. Not just Trump, but everybody else. Yep. All right. So I understand that. But the problem is, on the ground, the people know who Ashley Hinson and Joni Ernst really are. The people know who the Republicans in their own states, in many cases, really are. and they're not the branding that Trump has lived up to. And so there's an enthusiasm gap. And this is why when Trump's on the ballot, our people are running to the polls. And when he's not, they're like, that's not what I'm being sold. And I don't think there's a way out of that trap. I really don't.
And the enthusiasm gap, I think, goes more than to policy. I think it goes to a bias for action.
Yeah.
Trump has a huge bias for action.
I mean, on a given day, how many times has Ashley Hinson been to a family leadership summit?
I have not seen Ashley Hinson at a family leadership summit. My thing, though, with Donald Trump is that the bias for action. Gulf of Mexico, I'm going to make it Gulf of America. You know what? We're going to call it Mount McKinley. You know, it's going to be the Department of War.
Right.
And people are seeing this.
Right. So name the top 5 things that you can think of right now that Ashley Hinson did in Congress that fired you up.
That's the issue.
Yes.
And so what it is, too.
And then there's an Ashley Hinson in every state. In fact, that's pretty much who the Republicans are in almost every state.
And so when Ronald Reagan talked about bold conservative colors, not this pale pastel, and what Trump is saying, here's the action that you do. So this new Mitt Romney thing, you know, like, I'll just be more the Mitt Romney, that's not going to sell. They want bold leadership that they believe they can trust. If you can offer bold leadership that the people of Iowa believe you can trust, I think what it is, it raises the enthusiasm gap. If you don't offer that, I think we could be in trouble. Even here in Iowa, which has turned a lot more red.
I've got less than a minute here. I think we can't fix point 2. I think that's just the behavior of the king, and that's the king's court we're going to have, and it is what it is. Number one is the one.
Do you think a Trump rally in Iowa would help that out or no?
Of course, but only that brings me to number 1.
Yeah.
Number 1 is the one we have to do something about. If we do something about number 1, then number 2 will ultimately take care of itself because we're on the right side of every other issue other than the kitchen table economy. And I think we've got to get our arms around that. I'll give you the last story. I got about 40 seconds.
I think you're right. I mean, James Carville said, it's the economy stupid. I think people still vote their pocketbook, and they want to be able to make sure not only can they afford the house that they want to go into, can their kids afford to buy the home that they want to go into, and then they can they provide for themselves so that they have a choice that mom or dad get to stay home raising our grandchildren.
I'm not here, and listen, I don't think Joni Ernst was a great senator. She's not a communist or anything. She's just not the branding that Trump represents. And Ashley Hinson, I'd say, is a little better than her, but neither is she. These two ladies are who most Republicans are. But most of our people are sick of who most Republicans are and want the branding that Trump verbalizes.
They need to demonstrate they will have the bias for action like Trump has.
Correct.
And things will be different because you've elected me versus status quo.
Well, enjoy the footsteps of Paul tour. I look forward to hearing about it in a couple weeks.
All right.
Be safe,
guys.
I will come back. It'll be your turn to ask me anything. Stay tuned. We're back with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Steve Deace here with Todders and Aaron McIntyre and all of you. And you can let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox by emailing the program, steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. Follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, TikTok. You can also try to subscribe to the Steve Deace Show on YouTube. I say this in a very somber tone because it is highly unlikely to be successful. But let's do it and be legends. At Deace Show on YouTube, at Deace Show on YouTube, and then also hit subscribe, or if you're on Apple iTunes, follow. That way you know for sure every time we do a new episode, it's right there in your podcast feed. Thanks if you've done that. And thanks if you've left us a 5-star review. Tens of thousands of you have done that. Let's keep those going as well. We'll take tens of thousands more. And we appreciate all of you that have submitted those, just like we appreciate our friends over at Beam. And they appreciate you, right? They share the same values of America, hard work, self-reliance, rugged individualism that people like you do. And that's why they want to make sure that you get the absolute best sleep you can. I discovered Beam when they came on board this year. It was a game changer. Company proudly founded in America, people who share your values. It's a healthy nighttime blend of science-backed ingredients used to shown to improve sleep and used to improve your sleep so that you can wake up refreshed and ready to go take on the day. With Dream, everything will change. You'll start sleeping through the night without tossing and turning. I wake up more energized, not groggy. It's been a game changer for me, except, man, I really have to pee when I wake up. Because Beam is the last thing left on earth that has stopped me from getting up in the middle of the night to have to pee a couple times. That's how deep the sleep is with Beam. That'll put it to the test. So here's the deal. Beam is giving my listeners the ultimate Patriot discount of up to 40% off. Try their best-selling Dream Cocoa Powder. Get up to 40% off for a limited time if you go to shopbeam.com/Steve. Use the code Steve at checkout. That's shop, B-E-A-M, Beam as in laser beam. Shopbeam.com/Steve. Use code Steve for up to 40% off. You'll sleep better, wake up stronger, show up ready for your family, your work, and your country, because when you're well rested, you're unstoppable. Shopbeam.com/Steve. All right, statistician Ed Dowd is going to join us at the bottom of the hour. We're going to see if we can put our arms around the micro economy, the kitchen table economy. So what are we up against between now and this time next year when the midterms are on the line? But until then, it'll be your turn to ask me anything. Questions have been offered on our X account. No topic is off limits. I've not seen any of them. Todd has gone through the questions and selected the ones that he thought would be best to answer it on the air. We'll answer as many of these over the next 27 minutes as we possibly can, and then we'll get to several coming up in the overtime as well for subscribers at blazetv.com/Deace. Anything in particular I should be on the lookout for here, Mr. Erzin?
No, nothing in particular. Just gird your loins as always.
All right, let's gird our loins, and it's going to be random. Aaron, go ahead.
Stephen Snowman is first, who says, if the Department of Defense is renamed the Department of War, can we rename Treasury to Thievery and CIA to Central Deep State Agency, FBI Fraudulent Bureau of Investigation?
That is...
we can and we will.
We can and we must. You know what? Let's do that and be legends, as a matter of fact. All right? That is phenomenal. Well done, sir. Yes.
Let's go next to Jim, who says, if you could name one TV series that almost perfectly encapsulates the fact that the people are the problem with our society, what series would it be?
One TV series that indicates that people are the problem with our society. Well, I mean, there's virtually every family sitcom that has been done since 1996, I pretty much would do it. The dad's a nitwit, adult, only does the right thing if mom manipulates him or threatens him, usually with the withholding of sex. So unless Tim Allen's in it, pretty much every family sitcom that has aired in major streaming or network TV for the last 30 years has directly contributed to the downfall of society. And it's kind of funny that there were several shows on Disney that did that our kids were just not allowed to watch. When they were growing up, if dad was a nitwit, you can't watch any of that stuff. And of course, when they were younger and their friends were watching that stuff, they'd complain. Now they don't complain about it. Now they totally get it, particularly Anna, who's married now. All right. So, but I'm going to say that more than anything else. What do you guys think of that answer?
That surprised me. I thought you would say, because that's really ultimately what shows, I thought you'd say Lost. Because that's what it means. They're not lost on an island. These people,
they're spiritually lost.
Are lost.
Yeah. They're lost themselves. It's a very meta title. They're lost on an island, but what does the island represent? People correctly deduced after the second or third episode in season 1 it was purgatory, prompting the writers to say, no, it's not, to only then reveal at the end of the episode that's exactly what it was. That they were spiritually lost. But the thing here, and I thought about Lost, but here's why I didn't, I thought about that right away, but here's why I didn't give that answer. Because there's a desire for redemption amongst every member of the cast. Even Sawyer ends up revealing, by the end of his character arc, a desire for redemption. And I don't think there's a lot of desire for redemption in our culture today. In fact, I think if we watched Lost now, the show finished, 2011? So we're 15 years. If we went back and watched Lost now, we would actually, I think, find the show very redemptive compared to kind of like what I was just saying to Bob Vander Plaats about our conditioning on prices. Yeah, I mean, gas isn't $3 something a gallon in Iowa right now, but it's still $2.79, $2.89. That's still way more than anybody contemplated paying 3, 4, or 5 years ago, right? So yeah, I mean, at the time, Lost was great, considered great, but edgy. But if we watched it today, we are so numb to a lack of redemptive themes and qualities. I think that we'd find that remarkable. That literally every character at the end, even the greatest villain of the show, is on the periphery of redemption by the time the show ends. Right, the talk that he has there on the last episode about the portrait of Doubting Thomas and what that represents. Remember that? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I would venture to say almost by today's standards, Lost would be almost considered wholesome by today's standards. And again, that show's only 15 years old. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Since you thought, that was going to be my
It is
answer.
wholesome, but it's honest. Like all the shows today are.
Yes, it's honest about the fallacies of human nature, but it doesn't glorify them. That's why they're on the island. They're lost. Mm-hmm. They're being tested to see, are they truly seeking redemption, right? And so, but you know what? I've never asked you this, but whenever the topic of purgatory has come up on the show, you've been pretty adamant that Catholics consider purgatory to be for those who are already in a state of grace.
Well,
that you don't go there and earn your salvation.
Right.
You go there to work off the last remaining dross before you enter into eternity. That's how you guys view it?
Yeah,
because in Lost, they went there. They went to the island. Purgatory was to earn their salvation, was to undo, was to get was to find the redemption that they had rejected or that had not been offered to them adequately, or whatever how you want to view it in life. That's why they went to the island. It was it was meant to be a salvific experience.
Well, it was a work of fiction that borrowed from,
different traditions,
all
sure,
kinds of, including all manner of books and fiction and things like that. So yeah.
Okay.
Walking Dead.
That's a great choice, Aaron. And I don't know that I've talked about this in a few years, but do you guys remember the last episode of that show that Amy and I ever watched?
It was where they just went full
Negan,
nihilist.
Yeah, when Negan took the baseball bat to Glenn. And then at that point, it just dawned on me, this is going absolutely nowhere. And they are just going to this is just a drain circling. You know, it's great cinema. And of course we got out just in time because then and later on they ended up introducing a guy named Jesus who was a homo, and the show basically kind of went woke, you know. But the Negan baseball bat to Glenn was my tap out. That's when I realized this is just going nowhere. This is just nihilism on parade. That's a good call too, Aaron. That's a good one as well.
TV show news. I watched the first episode of The Office spinoff, The Paper.
Yeah.
So same producer, same writers as The Office, same mockumentary style. They went out of their way in the first episode to make it clear that the biggest loser, nitwit, moron, just completely worthless individual in that office in The Paper is a Christian. So,
of course. Well, there you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Basically called him a useless eater without calling him a useless eater.
There you go.
Next, we go to this one from John. In the last week, Tucker Carlson has said we should have apologized to bin Laden's family and that he doubts Hamas is a jihadi group. Should we just expel a guy who takes money from Qatar from conservative, polite society and move on?
So is there evidence of this?
I don't know.
Has there any evidence of this been presented? I know this is a very common trope. I like, on a personal level, I like Tucker Carlson. I admire a lot of the work he has done.
And in your defense, I will say there were multiple. Anytime there's multiple questions about an obvious concern, I will.
You think it needs to be addressed?
Forward.
That's fair.
This is not the only person. There are multiple people said like, "What's up with this?"
So, obviously, I vehemently disagree with Tucker on those two items. Just as I said about the drug cartels earlier, I hope Israel chloroforms Hamas. I mean, I hope they do Hamas like the Catholic Church did John Wycliffe. Just absolute incinerates him, then dig up the dust, then dig up the dust of the bones and burn that too. That's what I hope goes on there. Tucker also gave my good buddy Dr. Jeremiah Johnston an extensive platform to discuss the Shroud of Turin recently. Gave Lee Strobel a platform recently as well. Let me say this. I'm concerned about the direction on a few things. And it has nothing to do with disagreement. I got into this with our buddy Larry Taunton a few months ago because he's against question everything. I am not against question everything. I'm not against that at all. What I'm against, and I like Larry quite a bit, he's a very smart guy. What I'm against is where are we going for answers? That's what I would like to know. Where are we going for the answers? It's not about question everything to me. It's about where we're going for answers. And I would urge everybody within the sound of my voice to pray earnestly for Tucker. He has been gifted one of the largest individual media platforms in American history. He is uniquely inquisitive, and I know for a fact, genuinely interested in Christianity for the first time in his life. And he's many of the things that he's questioning, guys, I was doing shows about referencing things like the Schofield Bible Notes and said, you guys heard that stuff on WHO literally 20 years ago. I mean, literally 20 years ago. So I don't have a problem with the questioning of, does Genesis 12:3 really apply to the Jewish Israeli government in 2024 or 25? I did those shows 20 years ago. We asked questions like this. I don't have a problem with any of that. Because similar to Tucker, I ended up getting converted in the midst of already having a platform. And so the audience kind of walked through my sanctification process, my initial discipleship process kind of with me. I'm curious, why do Catholics have these beliefs and what's Orthodox mean and what was the Reformation? I don't know. I mean, I was a smart guy, but spiritually ignorant. So I went through a lot of the clumsy steps of sanctification and discipleship that never ends, by the way, for the believer. But the initial phase is like a boot camp, is clumsy. And I went through all of that and live on the air on a sports show. And then in the middle of that, we got moved to News Talk Radio, And so I'm sensitive to him being granted the grace to do that, particularly on a much larger platform than I had, and how many people gave me grace to do that at this stage. For me, I would say he's where I was 20 years ago spiritually. But I can also just tell you from experience that you cannot become a reverse idolater. The answer to your boomer parents' reflexive dispensationalism that was way more aware of, how close the latest unit of the Israeli Defense Force was to the Temple Mount than who was actually on the school board overseeing their kids' education. The answer to that is to not become reflexively against everything that the previous generation that fell for that trap was for. That's not the answer to that. And you'll become a reverse idolater. I'll use myself for experience. I spent a lot of time, it cost me friendships, relationships, certainly financial relationships, if we're being really honest about that, pushing back on this idea that Trump was some kind of anointed figure. You guys heard me push back on this publicly. You guys certainly heard me push back on it as few did privately in my private communications when these sorts of things would come up. How many years did I push back on this? Numerous. And then I come home one day from the movies on July 13th of last year, turn on the TV, which I almost never do, to watch a Trump rally on Fox News, which I almost never do. For some reason I just felt like doing it. No one else was at home. I turn around to go check my email at my desk, and I hear gunshots, and I turn around, the president, he's been shot. And I just watched this all transpire, and I think you were the first person I called, Todd, because I'm like, I think I was like Han Solo in A Force Awakens. I now am, it's true, all of it. I now have to, and hey, I'm still not I like Jonathan Kahn a lot. I get complaints and compliments every time he's on, depending on how you view charismaticism or not. But you heard me politely push back on him on the Jehu stuff on the show last week. I'm just saying, hey, I'm fine with that comparison. There's a reason why I've used Samson and not Jehu. Because Samson's final act, and we're in Donald Trump's final act. Okay, this is his last term here. He's pushing 80. This is his final act. And I don't know about you all, but I'd kind of like his final act to turn out like Samson's rather than Jehu's. Can I get a witness and an amen on that? All right? Because the Jehu comparison does not go well he gets essentially discarded. God writes him out of history. And his descendants. Their line of ascendancy is taken away from them. He just writes him out of history. I prefer the Samson arc, troubled figure and ends on a high note, because we're kind of in Trump's final stage, so I much would prefer this thing ends on a high note than a Jehu note. Fair?
Fair.
You know? But I'll push back on it on its what I deem to be its excesses, but I'm at the point I just came to the conclusion I'm a reverse idolater if I just now ignore the signs the other way now. Now I just have a narrative, and I want to be proven right about why I walked out of that green room 10 years ago at the Family Leadership Summit and said no to Trump when I could have gotten on the ground floor of this. I need to know I didn't make the worst personal career mistake in the history of American politics, arguably, by doing that, okay? And so I just need to keep justifying this the whole way. It's why I gave up Never Trump after he won in 2016,
right? Because
I didn't want to fall into the pit of having a narrative that I need to have justified. And I think the hardest thing for guys, if you're wired like Tucker and I, the questioning of conventional wisdoms that other people are not willing to do comes easy to us. It's easy to us. It's the air we breathe. It's how we were literally made. We were formed in the womb, and then God gave us the platforms we have because we are uniquely equipped to stand up and say, I'm going to make you prove that one to me, because and screaming at me and yelling at me and using, emotional blackmail ain't going to do it, okay? Not going to do it. I'm going to need you to actually show me you're right. We're just uniquely crafted that way, but you have to make sure, though. You have to make sure, though, that you don't fall into the opposite pit, which is, I'm now not just the questioner, I'm the judge. And I'm the final word.
Contrarianism is supposed to be like actual science.
Correct.
A discovery process.
Correct.
It's not supposed to be the actual end.
We're not here to affirm a narrative. Correct. And I would just strongly urge, because I've been where he's at, not nearly on his biggest stage, but I've been in a very similar place where he is. And so I'm sympathetic to it. And here's the thing for guys wired like us, you don't just have to test your own spirit on that one time. You'll have to do it your whole life. You'll have to do it constantly. There are times you guys have seen me go back and just argue against myself and what I just said because I'm concerned that I'm just getting high on my own supply. We all like the smell of our own farts, okay? When you fart, you don't run out of the room. Everybody else does, right? So that's the thing we have to be wary of, is we're the guys that will say, yeah, that's going to be a no for me, dog. To most of the forces in the culture that people won't say no to. But the kryptonite for us will be, then that means everybody has to say yes to what I say yes to. Do you see what I'm trying to say?
Oh, of course.
And that's, it's a slippery slope from contrarian to Colonel Klink. It's a slippery slope. It's a jump shot away. Got to be careful. And I am concerned that there's a narrative being sought after here and wanting to be verified here, rather than we're literally just, because I think if Chucker was questioning everything, it'd be going much better, actually. The real issue is, where are we going for answers? And I think for now, that's all I'm going to say. Before the next question, and of course my computer is locked up. Is the internet down here?
Shouldn't be.
Or is it just my email? Oh, here we go.
It's quite a day for tech.
It is. We're having a day here. Now about our friends over at Raycon. Apologies for the awkwardness there. Raycon, if you're remembering back to school shopping as a kid, new notebooks, new shoes, new routines. Well, we might not be in school anymore, but how about starting fresh? And let's do, instead of back to school, how about back to cool? Because Raycon's Everyday Earbuds Classic are a must-have for getting into a routine and making everything feel smoother and cooler. The Everyday Earbuds Classic, they're packed with upgrades now. Active, so they're classic, but they're updated. Nothing like an updated classic. All right, active noise cancellation, multi-point connectivity, so you can pair with two devices at once. A super comfortable ergonomic fit that stays put. All right, you're going to love the cool new colors. If you're a chick, you'll love the cool new mint color. If you're a guy, no, you won't, and you should not. All right. Quick charge for 90 minutes and just 10. If you're a guy, you're going to love that. Awareness mode. So when you're out walking the dog, you can, still kind of know what's going on around you while still getting the maximum learning experience as well. All right. BuyRaycon.com is where you want to go. RAYCON. BuyRaycon.com/Steve to get 20% off site-wide today. At BuyRaycon.com/Steve to get 20% off site-wide today. At BuyRaycon.com/Steve.
Next up, we go to Stevie, who asks if a person claims to believe in Jesus Christ for his or her salvation, but he or she is still striving to check every box and do their part to make it sure, can it be that they really have come to believe in him? Citing 2 Corinthians 5:21.
I don't think this is a tried and true rule. I think it could also be someone that has a very tender conscience and is eager to demonstrate that they don't want to waste what's been gifted to them. My buddy Mark Driscoll is fond of saying to people who come up and question him, "Can I lose my salvation?" He is fond of saying to people who ask him this, it's usually the people who ask that question who probably are the last ones that should be worrying about it. And so I think it depends on the person. I think if it's giving you, and here's how you can tell for you as an individual person, one way I think you can tell if you just have a tender conscience towards the Lord and you're very aware of the cost of your sin and you don't want to waste the gift that was paid at a high price for you, or you've put yourself in a give up, try harder cycle where now you're putting yourself up on the cross because what Jesus did for you was not enough. And a pretty good rule of thumb is, do you experience peace in your relationship with Christ? Or do you experience pressure? All right, do you experience the peace where you trying to check every box is like the adulterous woman who comes to him and washes his feet with her hair and, pours out the perfume? Like you recognize the debt that was paid for you and you earnestly have a tender conscience towards Christ for what he did. Okay. And you're like, I could just never repay this. Just what further acts of obedience could I do to I'm so grateful. Or is it, I'm unworthy of this. I'm not worthy of this. I need to show that I'm worthy of this. Do you need to show you're worthy, or are you trying to show you're grateful? And I would probably seek out that level of distinction. In another era, I might have a more Protestant-y answer to this. Okay? A traditional Protestant-y answer to this. But like I said in Theology Thursday last week, I frankly don't think most Protestant churches have earned the right to debate justification by faith alone with their Catholics, because they're not producing really any fruit in the people in many of their pews. I mean, and if we had more fruit, the culture would look a lot different than it does. I'm just doing math, So, I mean, to me, if you see the fruit of faithful repentance and obedience in your church, then you have earned the right to debate justification by faith with your Catholic brethren. But if we're just coming in here and we're just doing 22-minute mixed sermons after 3 songs, and everybody's out here in 47 minutes to get home in time to check their fantasy team in the NFL today, and grab a apple fritter and a cup of Joe on the way out, and make sure you tell everybody I'm praying for you and I'm doing fine, that's what most of Protestantism has been for a generation here, with Hawaiian shirts and pleated khakis and sweater vests. And so in this era, because we have taught this like passive pseudo-antinomian Christianity within evangelicalism, I'm going to have maybe a different answer than I would have had if I was, for example, in the Reformation era. If I was in the Reformation era, I'd be right there rooting you on Team Luther. But we're not in that era. I mean, we're in an era where Protestantism is very legalistic, in fact. You look a certain way, have certain emotions, reactions, drive a certain car, go to a certain church. Be nice. A bunch of external things to show that you're saved. That's actually justification by works, ironically enough. So I just don't think most Protestant churches have frankly earned the right to debate justification by faith with Catholics. Because there's just not a lot of faithful works coming out of their churches. There's a lot of construction works coming out. A lot of that. Not a lot of faithful works. Aaron, we got time for one more?
Yeah, let's go to this. The Apostle Paul, this is from Country Squire. Did the Apostle Paul call himself chief among sinners because he was a Pharisee?
Think of... That's an interesting question. I don't... Because, well, I'm trying to think of the connection because both of those things were said. I mean, he walks through his thing, but I would argue, was it because he was a Pharisee or because he was an active persecutor of the church? Well, some will say, that's what, that's what made him a Pharisee. Not every Pharisee persecuted the church. There were Pharisees that actually joined the church. Paul's own teacher, Gamaliel, actually, we see in the book of Acts, advocates against persecuting Christians and says, hey, if they're right about this Jesus fellow, we can't stop it anyway. So stop looking like, jerks. We can't win. We're better off just letting it, on its own and finding out if it can win. So I would argue he was making that statement and by the fact that Jesus comes to him and says, now, I'm verbal processing this in a minute because I didn't see this question coming. But Jesus comes to him and says, why are you persecuting me? A unique thing that he says only to Paul. He doesn't say this to Caiaphas. He doesn't say this to Pilate. He doesn't say this to the centurions who beat and torture him or crucify him. He says this to one person in all of the scriptures and to Paul. So as I'm verbal processing this in the moment, I kind of think that is what Paul is referring to. That he was taking glee. I mean, Paul was an accomplice, a direct accomplice to producing the first martyr in the history of the church, Stephen. So he's probably referring specifically to his own character before Christ than a particular station or association with a Jewish subculture would be my answer. We'll do more of these questions in the overtime today, but let's try to get our arms around this kitchen table economy with Ed Dowd when we come back. All right, back here on the Steve Deace Show. We are powered by our friends over at Patriot Mobile. There's so many choices nowadays that you could go to for who to use for your mobile phone services. There's new ones popping up all the time, even now in the red parallel space. But remember who the OG in that space was before anybody else. There was Patriot Mobile. They're leading the way in the red economy. They also outgained the competition when it comes to technology. They're one of the only carriers with access to all three major U.S. networks. That means exceptional nationwide coverage, along with the ability to have multiple numbers on different networks on a single smartphone. Absolute game changer with unlimited data plans, mobile hotspots, international roaming, internet backup, and so much more. Switching is easier than ever before. They've got contract buyout programs to get you out of a bad deal with the communist company if you want out. You can activate in minutes from the comfort of your home. Keep your phone, switch your phone, upgrade your number, keep your number, whatever you want to do. And yes, I know I confuse the terms there. Just making sure you're paying attention. All right. Go to patriotmobile.com/Steve. Use the promo code Steve for a free month of service to get you started today. Patriotmobile.com/Steve. Get started with a free month of service today with the promo code Steve at patriotmobile.com/Steve. And yes, Patriot Mobile is the official mobile phone provider of the Deace family. patriotmobile.com/Steve. Use the promo code Steve for the free month of service. Let's bring back an old friend of the show, one of the absolute leaders in the resistance and pushback during the era of the scamdemic. It is good to have our good friend Ed Dowd back on the show. Ed, it's been a couple of years, brother. Good to see you. How are you?
Good to see you, Steve. Thanks for having me on again.
So we wanted to bring you on to help us get our arms around the kitchen table economic issues that are facing the average American out there that I think are going to go a long way in determining what happens with these midterm elections next year and whether people like Bobby Kennedy Jr. are just facing an impeachment the day after, from the day after the midterms for the next 2 years. Because that's what will happen if we lose the House. Everybody's getting impeached. Trump, Kennedy, Hegseth, Rubio, everybody's getting impeached. We're having 2 years of hearings if we lose that midterm. But before we get to the economic news, since I brought up RFK Jr., I've got to get your reaction to the hearing that took place last week. I don't use this a lot in political terms, but I mean, I just thought it was a prophetic level moment watching him stand up there against these people and rebuke them the way that he did right to their faces. But what did you think watching that as somebody that's been following this data for the last 5 years?
Well, when Bobby went into HHS, it's hard to know from the outside what's going on. And to see this kind of reaction from the senators, you need to know as a supporter of RFK Jr. and the Maha movement that behind the scenes, he is doing something that is terrifying these people in the pharma complex and all their bought and paid for congressmen and senators. So this is, as ridiculous as it was to behold, it's really good news for us to know that he's fighting for us behind the scenes, because this kind of level of attack shows he's right over the target. Mm-hmm. Something's coming, and they're trying to prevent it and get out in front of it. So this, for me, this was good news. I expect to see mind-jarring revelations from the HHS soon.
One of the things I'm kind of hoping is that Bobby comes out of this with the message, and I understand why things were tempered at the beginning, didn't have an entire staff in there. There were other appointments they wanted to get in there. I mean, I just a couple months ago, Ed, I had someone contact me in a major agency of the Fed asking for help with media and messaging because, quote, everyone that I inherited is still wearing masks, and I can't trust anybody here with whom I'm working at. And it's a different agency than RFK's, but a very, very high-profile one within the federal government. So this is what the so-called swamp is littered with, these kinds of creatures, all across every agency. But I kind of hope now that we're into the second half of the year, and after that spectacle last week, I kind of hope Bobby got the message once and for all. There is no subtlety here. So at this point, I mean, this is what you're up against: all gas, no brakes. You know what I'm saying? That offer no level of temperance, because none will be offered to you in exchange.
I absolutely agree. There were, I guess, 1,000 HHS employees or CDC employees that came out against him and signed a letter. The first thing you do is you fire those people. Mm-hmm. I mean, they just identified themselves. Mm-hmm. This is you were right. My biggest fear when the Trump administration took over was there are so many deep state, career bureaucrats that have been in government service forever, and they're brainwashed. I call them blood-soaked ticks. It's hard to remove them, mm-hmm. and this is the battle we have. It's going to take time, and I'm just glad to see this coming to a head, because we know he's fighting for us, and we know that he's not bought and paid for, which is good news for all of us. All
right, so let's get to what is not great news, and I know, and hey, if I worked in the White House, I'd be doing the same thing. Okay, because a lot of, it's the old Yogi Berra line, Ed, half of this game is 90% mental, right? And there is a certain psychological warfare aspect, psyop aspect to economics, period, in terms of just kind of how does it feel? What's the vibe, right? So I understand from a messaging standpoint why kind of the higher brow, well, here's what the stock market is doing kind of stuff, the Trump White House is promoting, because you don't want to also feed a frenzy that creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. But when I see things like on my own street, where two houses went up for sale, one did last year, it went for sale $400,000. The house right next door on the same street, built in the same year, went up for sale for $350,000 on Friday, and I don't think it's because the owner wanted to take a $50,000 bath on what the guy next door got for his, right? Those are just some of those like vibes, those anecdotal things. Yeah, we're happy that gas isn't what it was before, but it's still way higher than it's ever been before. And so I call it like, kitchen table economics. And I think we got to get our arms around this. What are we doing wrong? What's the data say has to be fixed in order for the average American to not walk out of Walmart with 5 bags and a case of diet soda and pay $300 like I did last week? What do we got to do, Ed?
Well, the first thing to understand is that Trump inherited a disaster from the Biden administration. there should have been a recession at the end of 23, beginning of 24. But what we had was a new economic variable, which was illegal immigration. A lot of economists are starting to figure this out, that when you drop 20 million people into the country, most back half loaded in 23 and 24, you can float the economy for a couple more years. Now, Trump's policies are reversing all that, and we're going to see a housing recession and an AI bubble popping. And unfortunately, I would rather see it happen now so that we can start to come out of it by the midterms. But the longer it's delayed, it's going to hit, it's going to happen. And Trump's policies are designed to reverse all this and restore the middle class. But you see, it doesn't happen overnight. All these trade deals that have been signed and all these trillions of dollars of investment aren't even here yet. They're not breaking ground. There's a delay. There's a time in between that. Mm-hmm. The Japanese deal and the EU deal haven't even been ratified by their parliaments. So there's a valley before the recovery comes. And one of the best things I think that could happen is a housing recession, which I believe is already in process. It's going to happen. It's a cycle. You can't avoid it. And it's going to lower home prices, which, for those who are over levered and extended, they're going to get wiped out. But the middle class will be able to buy homes. So there's always a silver lining to these things. And a recession is needed to restore the middle class, in my humble opinion. Now, the Trump administration doesn't want that on their watch, but I think it's unavoidable because of what they inherited from the Biden administration.
So would you urge them to maybe take their hands off the wheel a little bit and get the pain out of the way now, as opposed to the natural political instinct of we've got to figure a way to not have that pain at all? What would you? I'm guessing you'd urge the former.
Yeah, I would. Yes, and I would also get some messaging out in front to start blaming the Biden administration and the Fed. The Fed has kept interest rates too high for too long. Real interest rates until recently were 1.5% to 2%, which is choking off investment and lending in the consumer economy. The AI bubble is what's been kind of floating the economy and GDP for the last couple of quarters. If you remove AI investment, Q1 and Q2 together, because there was some pull forward from the tariff buy ahead, people bought ahead of the tariffs. If you take out AI investment, I've seen some studies that suggest GDP was negative Q1 and Q2 combined. So we got the last bit of AI hype, and AI is just like the dot-com bubble. AI is real, but it's just like dot-com. We overinvested in the hype. There'll be a wipeout, and then the real AI companies will emerge 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now. Just like, you look at all the mega cap tech companies, they emerged after the dot-com bubble, except for Amazon. Meta, Apple, Google, they weren't around during the dot-com frenzy. So this is the same kind of setup. And unfortunately, we have the twin problem of we have a dot-com AI bubble type thing, and we have a housing recession coming. So unfortunately, the Trump administration is going to face both of those.
What could they affirmatively do that is politically achievable, Ed, that they're not doing, that you would urge them to do?
Trump is correct in admonishing the Fed for keeping interest rates too high for too long. So he's got that going for him. So he's already teed up the frame to kind of blame the Fed. But they also need to get out in front and talk about how much the illegal immigration juiced the economy. It was an illegal operation that added to the deficit. And when we use the balance sheet to methodically and logistically bring in these people, this just didn't happen magically. You don't magically walk from Central America, get to the border, cross, and get set up in a city without NGOs and an illegal immigration economy, because that's what we had. We had basically, we don't know how much was spent, but it could have been anywhere from $500 billion to $1.5–2 trillion that was spent to bring these people in. And that juiced the economy, and that's all going the wrong way. So the messaging needs to change.
You're kind of describing a form of like a chattel kind of a slavery, in order to create its own economy of scale to drive a larger economy. That's essentially what you're describing, basically, is what illegal immigration was. Beyond the cultural, criminal, socio-cultural cost, which we often discuss on shows like this, or the artificial driving down of wages. But I mean, you're basically saying illegal immigration under Biden was gold hitting California in 1849, and they are like, well, so much for that Missouri Compromise because we need the cheap labor out west now because that's where everybody's going. That's kind of what you're saying illegal immigration was for the Biden administration.
A lot of people got rich off illegal immigration. It was its own bubble, so to speak. And I think your audience needs to understand this. We were running crisis level deficits under Biden in 2023 and 2024, 8% deficits. The last time we had those deficits like that was during the Great Financial Crisis. So you essentially, the U.S. government illegally funded an operation to change the demographic nature of this country and bring in 20 million people. That's unprecedented. It's a new economic variable. Net legal migration is 1 million a year. We dumped in 10 to 20 million people within a very short period of time. There was a whole NGO network set up. Mm-hmm. There was money given to these people to spend. They spent immediately into the economy. It juiced the economy. And then there was the whole cadre of NGOs and people that facilitated this that injected their spending into the economy. And that's all going the other way. And that was the only thing that was keeping the economy kind of, limping along in 23 and 24. And then we have, unfortunately, a stock market bubble. We have valuations, the likes of which we haven't seen. And, look, Warren Buffett, he was early, as were a lot of us. We mistakenly didn't see what illegal immigration would do to the economy and keep it afloat. But Warren Buffett has amassed the largest amount of cash he's ever had because he's waiting for lower prices on stocks and assets, which is going to come. And that's not necessarily, again, a bad thing. It's a good thing eventually. It resets the economy so that we can have investment in productive activities rather than speculative nonsense like we have now.
All right, I've got a minute here, but we need that reset to happen and be kind of in place by this time next year when the electoral environment that's going to decide the midterms is pretty much cemented post Labor Day next year. So realistically, what do you think is the best case scenario to that end?
That we see a manifestation of bad economic data that causes interest rates to go lower, the stock market to crack, people to panic. But by the time we get around to the summer, it's starting to heal. So I'd like to see it happen now. The longer it's delayed, the worse it is for the Trump administration because the teeth of it could hit during the midterms. I'd rather see us, swallow the pain now, understand it, get the narrative and the frame going, and then on the other side, we'll start to see a recovery. This is what happened to Ronald Reagan. He was elected just like Trump because real wage growth was minus 2% going into the 1980 election, and Reagan won in a landslide.
But then he lost 40 House. But then he lost 40 House seats in '82. He lost 40 House seats. So, yeah.
Right.
We just can't afford that. Yesterday's Democrats are today's Republicans, so we can't afford that this time. But I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, but what happened was he had a double dip recession right after he got elected. That was that was caused by Jimmy Carter.
Yeah.
And the Fed at the time. But all of his policies finally started to kick in the second half of his administration.
Yep.
And then he won in a landslide again in the second term. So that's what we need to see, that kind of setup.
Good stuff, and it's good to see you, brother. Don't be a stranger, all right? Take care. God bless.
Thank you. Take care, Steve.
You bet. All right, guys. What do you think? Ed's like, hey, the stuff that we don't want to happen is unavoidable. Let's just let it hit the fan now.
That's why I booked Ed based on what I was seeing from him on X. My question is, even amongst people on the right, are we able to have those kind of very grown-up, it's going to be uncomfortable, but that's what's best for us kind of conversations? That's my fear, that we just are not that people anymore. Because what Ed is saying is just like, there's always economic cycles. These ones were put on steroids by wicked principles of Biden. We got to start messaging more about that again, reminding people what a monster that guy was and what he did to us. That's got to be part of this equation. It just can't be the spreadsheets. There was a very organized, immoral operation going on, funded by people who hate America.
The growing list of things that at least some self-aware Democrats do not like to talk about is Biden. they are allergic to him. They do not want to talk about him at all. So you're still less than a year into your administration. This is easier said than done, but if it's just an unavoidable outcome here, that there is some sort of recession, totally agree. Let's get it over with sooner rather than later.
We're going to stick around, do more Ask Me Anything for the overtime. For the rest of you, we'll see you tomorrow, noon to 2 Eastern, right after Glenn Beck, right here on Blaze TV. Until then, Romans 8:28.